Alright, how's it going everyone? This is going to be a wedding behind the scenes video, specifically solo shooting a wedding as a videographer, and I'm going to be shooting alongside my good friend Terry here, who is the photographer of the day. We do a lot of our wedding work together as a solo photo and video team, though we also do first and second shoot for each other. I would say this is a standard wedding, in this case taking place in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, for those who don't know, also known as Amish country.
What's the quick for white balance?
Oh, on yours, I set mine to the top, but C1 for you.
So C1. Okay.
And so I would do,
Oops.
yeah, and then I go K, and then over. And so I'm gonna see once we get in there. I'll be able to tell you once we get in there.
I'm gonna just guess.
But yeah,
Guess 30.
I'm gonna say try 4,000.
Right.
Try 4,000 because it's gonna vary. And so yes, as you can see here, we are discussing white balance and some of our camera settings. Now, given Terry and I are both from the same area, we actually did travel here in one car together. This is sort of maybe a quasi-destination shoot being a couple hours away. There are going to be a lot of benefits to working together as a team, even on different sides of the house in terms of video and photo, which I might talk about throughout the day. But one thing I will point out here is the fact that you are going to see, as I'm setting up my camera here, a lot of Sony a7R footage and a lot of 24-70 f2.8 G Master version 2 throughout the day. That's going to be my main rig, as you can see here, getting set up on the iFootage Cobra 3 monopod, also just with a Rode VideoMic NTG shotgun mic. One thing I will say also in terms of, though you're seeing us enter the hotel where we're going to do our getting ready and prep shots, is that we actually did meet the couple beforehand. We did get to speak with them and say our hellos without any gear in hand, without any sort of imposing reactions, by looking as though we're just ready to barge in and start shooting. I think that is an important thing to do. Also worth noting in this case, the couple that we're going to be filming, a big shout out to Jamie and Steven. We actually did shoot them before the wedding and before this day, so for those who are familiar with my channel, you might recognize Jamie and Steven from my manual focus video. Maybe I'll show some clips on screen of that. Yes, we actually shot their engagement a couple years ago, and so that helps, of course, knowing the couple and having some rapport with them and comfort and familiarity with what they like, their preferences, just getting to know them as people as well. Now, getting back to the camera settings front, as you're going to see me sort of setting up my shot here, I do get that question a lot, and so just to mitigate that, I'm going to show my camera settings on screen right now, just so you can get a general gist of what and how I shoot, at least in terms of, I would say, most situations throughout a wedding day. You'll see I use these settings maybe 80 to 90% of the time. Terry, I might try 5600.
56?
Yeah, okay. That's because of the light panels behind you. They're daylight, right? That's what I'm thinking. So in this case, we're going to start with some shots of the bride getting her makeup applied. In this case, kind of utilizing some different rack focus techniques, as you might see here as I go back and forth between the makeup artist and the bride. In this case, really, we're in a hotel room. It's not particularly aesthetic, so not really trying to focus on the room and all of the different things and people going on in it, but more so trying to focus on medium, tight shots and just trying to get the actual subjects in frame, whether that is, of course, the bride and the artist, or even just some other detail items like the makeup. Okay, you want to do, all right, switch?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, thank you. So as you can see here, Terry and I literally giving each other both the time and space to get the shots that we need, and to trade off here, not getting in each other's way, or kind of getting in each other's shot, making sure that we coordinate that. And as you can see here, getting some more direct shots of the bride with the natural window light and the makeup artist in the foreground also allows for some good looks. One thing I will say is that this is a very good selling point for picking up something like a monopod, and maybe even more specifically the Cobra 3. It is incredibly convenient having just a small body and compact setup that you could easily move around, get yourself into tight spaces to get the shots that you need, and not getting in the way of folks, not having to spread out and take up a ton of room with a tripod. And I would say even a further benefit of just having something like a Sony Alpha body and a more compact camera kit in general, and not maybe a crazy built-out rig. Not to say you can't do that, but again, some of these things lend themselves to just being able to quickly get around and get what you need and move on. Now in this case, we are now bouncing around to the groom suite and their area to talk with them and catch up. In this case, really, there is no wedding planner, there's no itinerary, so really talking to the couple, getting a feel for them, and just figuring out what's going on is going to be our main means of figuring out what's going on with the day, and making sure that we not just help kind of coordinate the schedule, but that we stay on track with whatever's going on throughout the day.
But we plan on being there by 1:30, I think. And are you getting dressed over there?
Nah, I'm gonna get dressed right here.
Okay.
She releases
I think
my
the only
suit.
one getting dressed over there is Jamie, right? Even the girls are getting dressed here, and then I'm driving that over.
Suit up.
So she's getting dressed over there.
I think just Jamie.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, that's good. But when you go to get dressed, we just gotta get you putting on your jacket.
Yeah.
So we get that.
Yeah. At this point, I might not even be dressed in time for the wedding.
Well, you got. I mean, for you, it's easy.
Yeah, we could stage it over there, right?
Yeah,
we could
you
fake
also,
it.
Yeah, you could also
if we
do
need
that
to.
too. If this
Over
doesn't,
there?
yeah, you just stage it. You take off the jacket.
Yeah.
Maybe adjust the tie.
Shoe, maybe.
The shoe or
Yeah.
something like that. But you probably have a better decor. Like,
Yeah. Especially if she's doing hers there, right?
Yeah.
If she's gonna be there, then we'll
Doing
both
hers
do
there,
it. Yeah.
The groomsman suite's pretty cool. Like it's got a big mirror and stuff. Like
And they got a
nice little-
suite.
It almost feels like like an old school like kind of burban library room.
and you're using that, right?
Yeah, we're gonna hang out there.
Okay, so yeah, that's what we'll do
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
But as long as we're there, like,
Yeah.
like
Before
either at the same
that,
time
yeah.
or before, we're fine. We'll make it work. We want to be there first. We want to look around. And we want to see what I know.
You
What
got the
you
address
showed
and everything.
me.
You're good.
Yeah.
So you can hear us working out some of the details there in real time. Really important to stay flexible, I think, in general, throughout the course of a wedding day. But in this case, once we wrapped up with the groomsmen, we headed back down to the bridesmaids and their area to get some more candids of the room, the different things that were going on there. One thing you're going to see me make use of for situations like this, and just in general, is a lot of shot sequencing. So this is the idea of really thinking of sort of shots and different settings and just overall the footage you're getting in sort of groupings of things, wide shots, medium shots, tight shots, so that you can not just get a random clip here or there, but that you could actually group things, 2s, 3s, 4s, and piece a story together just from getting different shots and different parts of the same thing with different focal lengths, different perspectives. That is something that I think is very helpful and maybe a bit easier to do with something like a zoom lens again, whereas if you had a prime, especially in a room and situation like this with this many people and a tighter space, you might have a bit more difficulty. Now, something you'll also notice is that I am filming these moments in 60 frames per second just to have the option to slow them down. You'll see me make use of this later. In terms of getting the shot of everyone, any idea when you want to do that or when you think you'd be ready to?
As soon as her makeup's up. Yeah.
Maybe 10, 15 minutes?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay. Yeah, we'll be back maybe 15 minutes or so.
Okay.
So in this case, Terry and I had a few minutes of downtime while the bridesmaids were getting ready for their kind of more typical shot that you'll see of, popping a champagne bottle, hanging out on the bed. Make use of your downtime when you have it. Always good to take a break. Now, at this point, of course, once we get back in the room and start to prepare for the actual moment of getting those shots, you're going to see that we're going to try to scope out the room and make the most of the situation that we have. You might have noticed earlier that this is sort of a cloudier day, so the room is actually a little bit darker than it might seem or than we would have liked. And in this case, we are also trying to be cognizant of just color temperature and trying to not mix too many different color temperatures together and sort of the havoc that might wreak on the video. So what you're going to see me here is, of course, actually turn off the lights by the bed. I'm not sure if I'd been in that situation, I would have done this again. It did help with kind of neutralizing the room. Of course, it made things a little bit darker, so maybe the footage was a little more grainy than we would have preferred, but in this case, I do think overall that it worked. Got the shots that we needed.
What am I doing? What am I doing with my body?
You probably can.
Kneel?
Yeah, I'd say
Like
yeah.
this.
Yeah.
Oh, you got it. That's a cool.
And then where? Okay, so you got 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, somebody's gonna have to be comfortable getting up on the pillow. Not you guys, but somebody's gotta feel it behind you. We're gonna have to make it. We'll get there.
Yeah.
We'll probably move you forward so that they could actually.
Yeah.
There you go. So they can get comfortable.
Kneel down or something, yeah, right? Yeah.
Yeah. There we go.
Yep.
You two lean into her a little bit more, or sit in closer. Yeah. All right. There you go. Now got it. Okay.
So of course, Terry being the photographer, he knows what he's doing. He knows how to pose and position people. Often in many cases that is true of any photographer, so we're just going to let him kind of help coordinate and stage that. So you can see here, going back to the idea of shot sequencing, just getting a lot of different perspectives and vantage points of the moment of toasting, of cheers, of all the bridesmaids on the bed, getting some reactions, and you also notice that ambient audio for moments like this can actually really help, so shotgun mic comes in handy. Now, of course, once we wrapped up here, we were basically done as far as what we could get in the hotel room. We pretty much, I think, made the most use of that situation. And at this point, it was now time to go to the actual venue itself, which is about 10-15 minutes away, so we made the drive down there. And really, our first step at this point was to just scope things out as much as we could. So of course, we are prepared enough to be able to make the most of what we can tell from the venue and the different rooms and figure out what we're going to do here. But as you're going to see in a little bit, we are also going to meet some of the venue staff and be able to get a bit more information on different things we could do, some maybe interesting ideas for different types of shots, which I think would help later. As you can see here, one of the things we first, of course, noticed was the ceremony location. This is a very interesting setup in a few different ways. You'll hear me talk more about the ceremony setup and some interesting challenges that might have posed later, but being able to think of these things and plan out some of these different setups and details that you're going to have to account for is a lot better to do hours in advance and well before the actual ceremony or reception takes place than in the heat of the moment. That is something that definitely make use of any prep time that we can get.
Yeah, because you could put you could put a tripod here, but then,
Yeah, and those people.
that's going to block their thing.
Yeah, I'll probably, well, I figured they'll be here.
Mm-hmm.
If I need her reaction, his reaction over his shoulder, I'm gonna come up here.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I mean, the cakewalk is, because it's too far down.
There's no way to...
So,
Well, and even there, it's like, it's not the best view, right?
Mhm.
Like, if you go outside of that to get that.
yeah, and I'm tightening it up anyway. If I'm meaning for this shot, it's only right off the shoulder.
What I think I might do is, I'll roam. I still want to do two, but what I'm thinking is, first of all, this can move. I'll take the liberty of moving it. I don't know if it's DJ or whatever, but I could do one like back here, right? Like out there, like center. And then I could do one over here, just kind of wide and out, So this would be a little bit wider, a little bit more perspective of the couple and everything of the room, and then that one would be more tight and kind of center focused, and then just roam around. That's what I'm thinking. And they're back here, they're easy to check on, right? And this one, and like that'll be, no one's gonna be coming in the center. If there's a DJ or someone there, they can sit at the table and deal with the tripod, and then that's in the corner. No one's gonna be going over there. They have the rows and aisles, so.
Yeah.
Right, so I think that's probably what I'll do.
Now in this case, we're not just looking for sort of the main rooms and setup areas for things like the reception and of course the ceremony, as you just saw. We're actually trying to scope out the property just for also good locations where we can shoot the couple portraits, just all the different family portraits, group photos, all of those different moments and areas as well. This is actually a very expansive property with, as you can see, a lot of greenery, some water in the background, so we were really trying to scope out what our possibilities were there. Not just in terms of what existed, but also where and in what direction the light was heading and where that was going to be most conducive to shoot from. But yes, we are checking out, of course, those main rooms, and we did look at the ceremony area, so not surprisingly, we would come across the reception area and start to scope that out as well.
It's just a small thing, so if that's a head table and that might be the DJ,
The only bad thing, one good thing is, this is wall to wall again. Wall to wall.
So the only thing we could do is, we could do a light against. Yeah, I was gonna say do a light against that wall. So. Hi, good.
Sam, nice to meet
Andrew.
Nice to meet you guys. I'm kind of just like shadowing the event coordinator Monica today.
Okay.
So I'll be here if you need anything. Are you guys like
Video,
photographer?
photography.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Sounds good.
How often are you, so you've always here? You always do a lot of weddings?
I started in August, so I've only been here 2 years, but I got married here, so
Oh, okay.
Okay,
Cool.
okay.
I'm familiar with everything.
Okay.
Have you guys been to the venue before?
No.
Nah, first
Yeah.
time.
Do you want me to kind of like show you?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's generally a good thing to, of course, say your hellos, make some quick introductions with the venue staff, and I would say even more so in this case, if you get offered to see a tour of the venue and to get a lay of the land from those who work there themselves, take it. Definitely worth it. Again, not just to scope out the different areas you can use for more of the standard wedding shots and things you're expecting to shoot, but also to find out about those unique and less common areas where couples might end up doing things.
Good space in here.
Okay, cool.
Space in here. Feels like.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's also a little porch out here, which is
Oh,
good
that's-
for some like pictures and stuff
That'll be
too.
good.
So when she's like ready, or even if she's gonna be like getting ready.
Oh, how do you get out there?
Just this door.
Oh, there's the shootery board or whatever the guy says.
Oh, the charcuterie board?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Nicely
okay,
fitting.
this is cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, this will be perfect. Yeah, this will be great.
This is really cool.
We could do a lot of, yeah.
Where do you see a lot of first looks at?
I like this one corner. I could show you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So since we had never been here before, of course, this was helpful with getting familiar with this venue. It was sort of an old converted barn or house with a lot of extensions built onto it, but this is also important, really, I would say, just for also getting a feel for maybe even helping in that aspect of planning and keeping the day on track. I did mention before that there was no official wedding planner, so some of the venue or the staff there, at least in some respects, were helping to kind of serve in that capacity, at least in different portions of the day. So again, having an idea for what they were thinking and what rooms and different locations they would be most accustomed and most comfortable to doing things in, that was going to help us in planning as well, and also kind of help know some of the different areas that were maybe used for more private or quiet areas for the couple, like if they were doing a private cocktail hour area, which is something you'll sometimes hear, and that in this case the couple was going to make use of as well.
So this back here, they and the bridal party are gonna come straight back here after the ceremony.
Okay.
That way, if you need any other photos, you can just collect them here.
Okay.
And they're
that's
also
nice.
having like a mini cocktail hour for them. So,
Just for them, okay.
Yeah. So if you don't need any photos with the people, like you can just come and get shots in here if you want.
Okay.
I like the first look back in like
Okay,
just
where the
preference, like this
yeah,
little
little
nook.
patch. Okay,
Yeah, because
okay.
it has that kind of like
Yeah, see
there's
the little
like
spot.
yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
I just think that's really pretty, but
Okay.
people have done first looks really, like just randomly out on the ground somewhere by the river or.
I like this because it's enclosed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I like
I
that.
think it's just like an intimate kind of moment.
And so with our tour and the scoping out of the venue that we had done ourselves, at this point, it seemed like the right time that we could begin to bring our gear in and get ready for shooting all of the next portions of the day. So in this case, we just brought our gear into sort of an unoccupied corner of the venue. That is one of the main things I'll try to do. Of course, if we're going to be in one location, either for the day or at a certain point for the rest of the day, just park my stuff down out of the way so I have a little space to work out of. In this case, you're going to see me going from where I was using the monopod beforehand now to the gimbal, in this case the DJI RS3, just to be able to get some smooth flowing shots and add a bit of motion to what I'm going to be shooting, which in this case is going to be a lot of different things. You'll see me switch across from shooting details to different couple and family portrait moments, and again, of course, we're going to touch back into some more getting ready shots, and also just getting some establishing shots of the venue and different rooms at the venue as well. Now, I often do like to switch things up just so, again, I'm not doing necessarily 100% motion for the day, so not on a gimbal the entire day getting the same shots, and I'm not on a monopod the entirety of the day, or, as you might see me do later, with handheld, just trying to capture different moments and parts of the day in different ways, and with different techniques, and knowing what works best for that particular purpose. Now in this case, I'm still going to be using my A7R V and my 24-70 f2.8 GM version 2. In this case, for gimbal balancing, I do like to follow what I would call sort of the halfway zoom rule. So if I'm balancing a zoom, try to go maybe, say, with the 24-70 around the 50mm mark. Also, of course, if I'm going to have the screen out, have the screen out. If I'm going to have a lens hood on, have the lens hood on, and to get it sort of in the most common or average place to where it will be so that the motors are accustomed to what it needs. I would say overall, I do actually like to keep my gimbals in sort of a almost pre-balanced configuration. So typically they're ready to go for something like a 16-35, 24-70. I don't move them too much from different configurations there. And once I do this, basically just hit auto calibrate on the RS3. I would say the motors and the overall settings in terms of how it stabilizes shots is pretty good as the defaults, and I go from there. Now, as you can see me getting some different B-roll shots of the wedding ceremony area, you might ask what constitutes as good B-roll for these sorts of things, and of course that is all up to, you know, the individual shooter. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but I would say in this case, it's making sure you capture those rooms and those different shots that the couple might have seen and actually had fallen in love with when they picked the venue, And these are the types of things that sometimes as videographers we tend to miss just in the heat of the moment. We don't necessarily think about some of these things when they're perhaps empty, or that we even need to capture something as standard as a room. But again, you never know when it might come in handy and how it might help you tell the story. So I would always say it never hurts to get a little more footage, even more than you might think you need in cases like this. But these details don't just extend to rooms, they include also all of the other little things that you're going to find throughout the venue. Again, all those little things the couple might have paid for and that they might have considered that make, you know, the experience of the day just look a little and feel a little more seamless. So make sure you get them. I also think these little types of cards and kind of placeholders are nice because they do show the guest names, so that is one of those opportunities to help get that. You see me getting it just from some different perspectives here, making use of that 60 frames per second B-roll. Now again, keeping in mind the idea that we want to get some shots of not just these empty rooms, but of course the venue itself. To get some establishing shots, you're going to see me capture a lot of those here. Worth noting a couple things. Yes, we didn't really get much of establishing shots in terms of the hotel when we got there. That was intentional. We were kind of advised by the couple that we didn't need to include any of that, so we didn't bother. That's number one. And then number two, though we might have actually had preferred to get some drone shots of this area, this particular wedding venue was right near a airport, at least within a few miles, and so that prevented our ability to do that. But again, never fear, if you're armed with the right tools, you can still get some good B-roll and be able to capture that. Now in this case, Terry had acquired the wedding dress, and so we are now able to shoot this together. Really important that, of course, for any of these specific details, so the dress is going to be a big one. Any of the items you might find in a typical flat lay, that you coordinate that with the bride and or the groom, and just the overall wedding party. These are definitely time-sensitive items, and of course just highly important, so you need to make sure you get them, you set them up, you shoot them quickly, and you can get them back to the respective people they should be going to, which generally is going to be the bride and the groom. In this case, we're taking the sort of planner and event staffer's advice to shoot some of these items here in this gazebo. You'll see the lighting here may be kind of a bit interesting. We have some mixed color temperatures going on, and there is actually a bit of flicker with the light, but I think it's still overall worked out. But that is something you have to be cognizant of course, if you're shooting it or when you're capturing those shots. And if you have a Sony camera or something that maybe has the variable shutter feature, make use of that if you need to, just to reduce the flicker there. So here we're now moving from the dress shots to the different flat lays. Again, lean on our photographer, in this case Terry, set this up. So once he's gotten his shots, I can move in and start to get some of mine. Again, just getting different perspectives, making use of the fact that I have the gimbal, so doing some push-ins, pull-outs, making use of the fact that I have the zoom lens, so getting some wide ones of the entire flat lay setup, but also some tight ones, as you're going to see, getting a bit more closer in on the rings there, on the actual invitation. And so really just making sure again that I'm able to get these things quickly, because these items as well, especially of course being the rings, are going to go back to the couple pretty quickly, and we want to make sure that these are in a safe place while we have them in our possession. So in this case, just trying some different ideas with the rings. We had this little sort of bar table that got used later for cocktail hour and the reception, so thought with the wood surface this might look good for some ring shots. I think in this case it's a decent option. Provides another sort of look that you can use. Again, it never hurts to try things so long as you have the time and you're not stretching it too thin. So I think that's always good to experiment a little bit if you have the time. And you'll notice that in each of these cases we are making use of natural light, so whether for these ring shots or the flat lays, trying to make the most of the situation and the environment we're in.
At one point, before the first look, I want a picture of me up here and him down there.
Okay.
Okay.
We're in
Before
the
the
same.
first look.
Yes,
So he sees you or he doesn't see
he
you?
sees me.
Oh, then how you gonna do first look?
No, so before the first look,
Uh-huh.
a picture of me up here in my dress and him down there in a suit before he sees me. So it's like he doesn't know that I'm up here, kind of thing.
Oh, okay. So
Okay.
you have to just hide him.
He's
So
not hit.
He's not hidden, but he can't look at you.
Yeah, just a shot of like
Just
me-
facing out, they're both
Yeah.
facing out,
So,
okay.
So I'll have you here.
Like I'm
Yeah.
looking down at him and he has no idea I'm up
Yeah,
there.
and he's just
Yeah.
looking out that way.
Yeah.
And then
Okay.
walking back that
Right
way.
to the
Yeah,
gazebo,
first
and
look, I
then...
want to do it in the gazebo area.
That's what
Yep,
we're doing?
that's what we're doing,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, stay on the same page.
Okay.
All right,
Okay.
you want to put you on this side or that side? Let's try you there first.
This is my good side.
All right, so then we're going
So I want to be facing this
So
way.
you on this side.
Okay.
You're on the smoke
Okay.
side. All right, so come up because you're in that shadow. Let me see. Come out. The shadow's over there. Come out all the way out here. Still gonna have a little bit of it, but look out this way. Yeah, look out that way.
So yes, as you can tell with moments like that, communication is key. we're planning out not just first look, but some even pre-first look shots that the bride wanted to have. And of course, yes, we're trying to think about light here. Notice that the bride did have a good side, so we're trying to pose her and frame her up on this balcony here with her mom, getting some classic dress zipping shots, as you might notice. The light here on this balcony was just really beautiful, just perfect natural light. You really couldn't ask for much more. You can see me working side by side with Terry here to do some of these push-in shots. We're making sure we're not getting in each other's way. And again, really, for a location like this, we're leveraging that knowledge we gained from getting the tour of the venue, working with the event staff that works here to even be aware that this was an option for us. So one of those key things that, again, had we passed on the tour, had we not maybe introduced ourselves and taken the time to do that, we would not have even known about this particular location. So in this case, of course, now we're inside trying to get some more B-roll and getting ready shots of the bride. Not nearly as picturesque, a lot more crowded, some mixed lighting going on, but we're making the most of it and getting what we can for some additional shots here that maybe we couldn't get outside.
Let's do shoes.
We could, yeah, it would help. We might move the chair out a little bit, but we'll see.
So yes, even in an environment like this where we do have, I would say, certainly a lot less control than we might in some other areas, still trying to plan out and think intentionally about the room, about the lighting, about where the bride sits, how we capture some of these moments. Now I will say, and you may notice that the lighting did change throughout the course of us shooting. So of course those interior tungsten lights went from on to off as bridesmaids came in and out of the room, folks left, and that's okay. These are some things that from a white balance perspective or from a shooting perspective, you can tweak exposure, you can adjust that in post. And though I think we were well on track, or it was more important to capture what we could than to try to set the shots up perfectly.
Forever. Alright, I should get this tie on then.
Alright, yeah, get rid of them.
Where do we want to, what room we either got to pick?
We'll take there.
Take this one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know where my tie is though.
Get out of the way, guys.
Yeah, he turned it off.
Yeah.
Mike, where's my tie, bro?
If we could get him,
You want him closer to the window?
I just want to see. I think I'll block the sign. So.
Huh?
Yeah, you can kill that light too, whatever.
Okay. Yeah. I mean that door could be closed, right?
Yeah, so you're gonna be facing him. Get back closer to the. Yeah, there you go. Now, yeah, that's better, right?
I was
Yeah.
in my past life.
He said, "Yeah, right. We know where the lights go. You know where it goes."
So now moving on to our groom prep shots, which yes, we did skip at the hotel just because it wasn't the best location for it and we knew we'd have the opportunity to do it here. So of course, we still are trying to plan this and stage this as best we can. We're thinking about lighting, we're positioning Steven near a window here, we're making sure all the recessed lights in the room are off. Again, we're trying to just make the most of this situation. A lot of times, these minor details can make a major difference when you get it. And again, I am thinking intentionally about composition here, so sticking towards medium and tight shots, given the room, given the tight space, given them making room for Terry to get photos as well simultaneously. So really, this is all important to think about compositions for situations like this. And we are trying some different areas. You see me shooting here in the mirror, just to get some ideas and shots here. Now going a little bit wider to get some of those more formal prep shots of Groom getting his suit on, buttoning up his suit jacket. Again, just getting different candid looks. There's really no telling when you're capturing moments like this which ones might make the cut or turn out good. But again, having those things in 60 frames per second, they're going to provide some options later on in post for either slowing things down or being able to make the most out of a tiny and not maybe particularly long moment when it actually happened. Now, once we were done here, in this case, we actually brought the groom outside to get ready for that sort of pre-getting ready shot. So whether you recognize it or not, this is that same corner of the building where we got the bride in that great natural light outside, just a floor below here that we're going to use for the same setup.
So I just turn around.
No, you do not look at all.
Yeah, you're just going to be facing us.
This is just for the picture.
Yeah.
So you don't get to look at her at all.
So you're just facing us. Yeah.
Yeah. So you don't even accident. Even if you fall face forward. There's this fall. Don't look back.
Oh, I got a good idea for this too. For a couple
Alright.
ideas, like the pan up.
Oh,
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right.
We're just at her
We just gotta.
Okay.
Andrew, one pocket or two?
What do you think? You think
Take it out. Let me see. Two.
two? Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
He's
Yeah.
not gonna look out. We told him.
Yeah, very
And
good.
in the event that you do look out,
I ain't looking up.
No, this is just what you would look at. See this tree?
Yes, sir.
That's the only thing you look at. You would look at that tree, just
Copy
like
that,
that.
copy that.
All right. So it'll still look like you're looking out towards her.
So following up on my idea to get that slow panning up shot, which, you know, I think this looked okay overall. We were dealing with some harsh lighting here, at least especially for the bride area and the balcony, but I do think overall we were able to make this work. You know, get some interesting individual shots of the bride and the groom, each from the different levels, and of course, get that shot of them together. But once we captured this moment, it was time to plan for the actual first look. So in this case, we wanted to get the groom in place, and made the most of that, because again, never hurts to get some additional shots of that first look and sort of the groom in his stance ready to see his bride in this case. So making use of that extra time to get some more B-roll and shots around him.
When he turns, I'm gonna get him to turn from the right shoulder back.
From the right, from the way you just did it?
Yeah, off that shoulder.
Yeah, okay.
So when you tap him, on his right shoulder, so he turns to his right shoulder. But I'm gonna get on both sides of you so we can get both angles. And then y'all just talk about sweet nothings, try not to cry unless you have to.
Hey, whatever's natural.
So you can hear Terry game planning here, trying to coordinate everything to make sure the first look goes smoothly. And I will say, you know, in our case, we really don't try to stage these or do anything fake. We try to just let the natural moment happen and be there to capture it. So yes, we do try to take part in the idea of this being a one-take moment and being able to really just capture the bride, capture the groom in their natural state, and whatever happens, well, happens.
Back to him. Okay, go ahead, Jay.
I'm so mad.
Go ahead, Jay.
Are you thinking of being real?
Go ahead, yeah, let me know.
So yes, if you want a reason to not do 3 or 4 different first looks, I would say it's for a moment like this, when you get real emotion and you're able to genuinely capture that, capture some ambient audio from the moment. That is one reason to maybe leave those shots in regular motion and regular time. Now, we did also take this moment to capture some couple portraits, because again, this was a good location and just a good moment to be able to capture some of those natural reactions and natural emotions after the couple had just met. I will say, I think the gazebo, I think the lighting, this setup here overall worked pretty well. And going back to our first look, I think it is very common for videographers to think with the first or second shooter how you might need 2, 3, or 4 cameras to be able to get something, but yes, I really do think you can capture enough and get what you need, or maybe even more than you need, with just one camera if you plan it well. So here we are now going into the couple and family portrait moments, as you can now see. I do think it is generally best to knock this out before the ceremony, if and when you can. Of course, this was a very large, I would say, overall wedding party, in terms of bridesmaids, groomsmen, and just the overall family in general, so there was a lot to get through. You can see we're starting with the brides here, individuals, bringing them together, getting a mix of formal and creative shots, fun moments for video. Terry always makes sure to include some moments with motion, just so there is content, at least on the videography side, and it's not just folks standing still 100% of the time. I have to say, fall is one of the best times to get shots like this outdoors or in settings like this. You'll see we're able to make use of the benefit of falling leaves and actually capture that in the moment. Also, you will notice again, we had scoped out the lawn and this area previously to find the best location, to find good lighting, and I truly think this worked out in our favor here. Now, in terms of what I'm doing, again, this is a larger wedding party, about 30 to 35 people, so I'm just really focusing on some very simple pans, tilts, smooth, slow motion. Now, a lot of times, if anything, these are the types of shots that actually won't make the film, but really, you never know what moments you might end up not having the best shots for, or needing some extra coverage for, so I think it really helps to get these and maybe have some plan B or plan C shots, and in this case, you'll see, try to do one of those trendy shots, and I think it actually worked out.
Closer to each other, almost like you're nose to nose, because I can't see the couple and I don't want to see the couple. Like that? Yeah, I don't want to see the couple. Yes, I don't want to see the couple. Looking at you? No, just look at the person across from you. There you go, get closer, get closer. Now, when I say step back, you step back first, you step back second, you step back third, just like that in that order. All right, here we go. Now, get closer so I can't see them. All right, ready? Here's your spot. And action. Move. There you go. Move. There you go. Move. There you go.
Keep going.
And kiss.
Perfect. That was perfect. That is the best. That is the best one we've ever done. I'm not even kidding. I'm not even kidding. That was perfect. I'm not even kidding. Perfect.
No, that was not an exaggeration. I really do think that's probably the best one of those types of TikTok shots that at least I've been able to capture. So when it works out well. Now in this case, I am back here in the reception room starting to prep for the ceremony. A lot of cases I try to get this done maybe a little earlier, but again, this was how the day went, so that's fine. You can see me here getting Tascam DR10L Pros ready as lav mics for the Groom and the Efficient. This is actually my first time using the DR10L Pros. And also getting my Zoom H6 ready because I know there is a DJ setting up for the ceremony, and so I want to tap off of his audio as well. Now you'll see me get the Zoom H6 recorder in position here, not fully set up because the DJ was actually still getting set up themselves, and so I knew that I could come back to it to get the rest of this setup going. So of course I had a lot more to do in terms of the overall camera setup, so I was fine to just get things in place so that it would be ready to go later. As with everything, it's important to be flexible and respectful of other people's time, and yes, DJ is going to be probably one of the closest vendors you'll be working with throughout the day, and or band if there is one, so I think it really makes sense to have a good relationship with them if and when you can. And I like to think in most cases end up with a good relationship with DJ a lot of these wedding days. So now it comes to the point where I'm starting to think about cameras and how I'm going to set up this ceremony shot and do a multi-camera setup here. In this case, utilizing 3 angles and pretty much sticking to the idea I had discussed previously in terms of what I would use when we were scoping out the venue. Again, speaking to the fact of why scoping out the venue in advance is a really important step here. So I'm still going to leverage my, yes, Sony a7R V on the 24-70 and on the monopod here, just to be able to get a good roaming angle of everything that's going on. That's going to be sort of my more dynamic shot that I will adjust in time and as the ceremony progresses. But I'm also going to be utilizing 2 static camera angles on my Manfrotto 290 Extra and 128 RC series tripods. So what I'll consider to be camera 1 here is going to be my Sony a7R on the 50mm G Master f1.2 lens, just sitting at the back of the venue, capturing a wide shot of a lot of the crowd, but of course of the couple, of the bridesmaids, the groomsmen, and really everyone sort of at the front of the altar there. Getting sort of a wide and medium type of look, which I think will provide a nice different perspective on the room. Now camera 2, as we'll call it in this case, is going to be my Sony a7S III, utilizing my 70-200 G Master f2.8 version 2 lens. In this case, not focused too tight, but really just kind of getting a center perspective of the couple right down the aisle, or slightly to the side of the aisle, of course, to not be in the way. And this combination of angles overall, I think, is going to provide enough coverage here. I would say 3 cameras tends to be my standard multi-camera coverage setup for ceremonies, at least when I'm solo shooting. Of course, you can do more. Of course, there's different ways of doing this. In fact, when we're oftentimes shooting together, Terry and I, as first and second shooter, with video, we are usually utilizing, I would say, somewhere in the range of 4 to 5 camera angles. That's where we're also trying to get those tight shots of the bride, of the groom up there. But you know, as I get the cameras into position here, I'm really making sure I'm thinking about a few things, especially in a room and setup like this. So number 1, getting some height on the tripods, and these shots are key because you're going to have people standing for a time and not just sitting, of course, so making sure that you try to get the most of what you can when you can't actually operate those cameras and when folks' heads might be in the way. I think that is one thing to keep in mind. Number 2, of course, being able to just keep the legs of the tripod out of people's ways and keep paths clear in the room as much as you can. That is definitely important. Again, you're going to be occupied and thinking about a lot of different things, whether manning my kind of roaming angle here, whether thinking about audio sources, whether just checking in on the cameras. And so I want these cameras and where they're placed to be pretty safe and largely self-sufficient, and not have to worry about them, say, if I were to put them in a not-so-great spot where I feel like I'd have to constantly check on them. And of course, number 3, I will also say, kind of in that similar vein, to remove the pan and tilt arm a lot of times from the tripod. Again, if I'm not operating the camera behind tripods, then you don't really need it, and that's just one extra thing that sticks out. And so that's another key thing that I can do to help save a little bit of space when you're in a tight ceremony setup, which I would say this overall was in this case. And certainly, of course, you don't need them when the shots are locked off. And then number 4, Again, I'm really thinking about matching camera settings across each of my angles, so making sure that exposure and things like white balance, also utilizing manual focus for these locked off shots, because again, I want to be cognizant of when people sit and stand or walk in front of them, and I don't want them to get periodically focused on the wrong thing for a period of time. Making sure that all of these things are consistent and set up in the way that I want. I will say, generally for these locked off static angles, they're usually in 24 frames per second. I don't really see a need to keep them in 60 frames per second, but I will keep that roaming angle on me, whether I'm using a monopod or a gimbal, in some cases at 60 frames per second, just because I think it's nice to have a nice slow motion option if and when you need it. So as you saw a moment ago, our static shots are now ready. I did actually lab up the Efficient and Groom. I didn't capture that on my BTS camera. And now back to the DJ audio.
Okay. You got sound?
Yeah, I got sound. I don't know if you have a mic.
The mic's up there. I'll grab it.
Okay. Yes, you do. Quick. Awesome. Thank you, man.
One, two, 1, 2. It's gonna be a little louder than that.
Yeah. No. Perfect. I'll leave it. Okay. I might check on this periodically throughout the thing, but I think we're in good shape.
So we have our audio now set up with the DJ, and of course we are just waiting here for the ceremony to get started, helping Terry double check his Sony a7R 3 settings in this particular case. And this might be one benefit if you do shoot with folks that are on the same camera system as you, certainly if you're familiar with them. I know I'm always willing to lend a hand when I'm shooting with folks on the Sony system. Of course, I shoot with Terry regularly. He shoots Sony as well, so we can often make sure, even when we're shooting photo and video, that we're actually on the same page in more than one way, at least in terms of different areas of settings. Because, of course, I do shoot photos as well, so we can share in some of that wisdom and knowledge. Now, as we make our way up to the front of the aisle, you're going to start to notice some of the different lighting challenges that we were having here. And this gets back to what I was talking about when we were scoping out the venue, when I discussed some different challenges that we would face later in the day. So, we have some very bright streaks of sun that are coming through these sides under the gazebo that are just generally totally uncontrolled. And you can see here, Terry and I are testing out the lighting, seeing how it looks on each of our skin tones, and just trying to overall judge and test general exposure of what we think the bride and the groom and the light that they'll be in. I'm going to say that overall this is one of the more challenging ceremonies I've ever had to shoot, given some of the lighting that happened here. Maybe one of the saving graces here being, if you can see perhaps on myself, that if you had someone to block the sun from one particular side, that might have helped the other person from preventing them from being in direct sunlight. But again, we just knew we'd have to account for this, and we'd have to think about how we were going to shoot different things throughout. So again, this maybe speaks to the idea of having some B-roll to cover over moments if we find them to be unpleasant. You can see us still trying to get a sense for what this lighting is going to look like, getting some different crowd shots here and other B-roll moments that you would usually get from the ceremony right before folks are getting ready to come down the aisle. And so as folks make their way towards the front of the ceremony area, you can see the sun in all of its ever so bright glory, and the shade from the gazebo having a nice, interesting time mixing together to form a very interesting type of shot. I am genuinely curious if there is anyone out there that's been in a similar situation, maybe to something like this, and how you've handled it, maybe how you might handle it. Feel free to start a discussion and leave some comments below, because I'm always willing and interested to hear from all of you that watch these, and so if you have any ideas or thoughts, feel free to leave them. But, of course, another surprise here, as you might have noticed, we have our groom and the groomsmen standing on what would typically be considered the opposite side of the aisle, which means, of course, our bride would be on the different side along with the bridesmaids. Again, not sure if this was intentional or not. I know Terry and I were planning otherwise, but again, we didn't really have a wedding planner. There is no venue assistant helping out at this point, so we're just making it work. And as you might be able to tell now, we have the bride with her father coming down the aisle. Again, especially given the lighting and circumstances, this is probably a case where 60 frames per second ultimately helps in terms of being able to just capture those moments and get the most out of them if and when we need to slow them down, like perhaps here, to make the most of a somewhat usable lighting situation. Usually once the bride enters the front of the ceremony area, peel off to the side just to capture that handoff from the father giving the bride away to the groom. Again, dealing with our friend the sun here, but trying to make the most of the situation, what we have, and from this point, our goal is to get out of the way and start capturing the event and the coverage from other parts of the room. Now, I'm not going to show you every single moment of the ceremony here. I don't think that would necessarily serve to benefit folks, because in this case, this was really a shorter ceremony overall, probably didn't last more than 10 minutes. There were no distinct or direct couple vows. There were also no letters that the couple wrote to each other to read earlier, if you're wondering why we didn't capture that. So really, it's just Terry and I kind of roaming around, me utilizing that third monopod roaming camera angle to get a bunch of different looks and perspectives from wherever I can get to easily in the room or that gazebo location. Again, if you were wondering, being able to get a tight bride or groom angle up front, like some folks might try to get, especially for video, wasn't really going to be possible. Outside the gazebo, you had a pretty significant drop-off with the ground on one side, and then the other side you had a pretty significant slope up that led to some not great and kind of precarious angles that you'd have to place the camera on. And not to mention, just given the layout of the room, I think the bridesmaids and groomsmen would have largely blocked those views as well. And we had the sun to contend with, so really, I think in this case, the camera angles and what we set up for the given circumstance overall worked well. You can see here, having something like the Cobra 3 is a really nice benefit. I can just leave it, getting some shots and letting it do its thing while I'm able to check on the other cameras, while I'm able to check on the audio. And in this case, really just kind of thinking of that roaming angle, leaving it in a given spot for 30 to 60 seconds, letting it capture enough of a given moment before I move it to capture the next portion of whatever I'm trying to get. You'll notice I'm also being very conscious of where Terry is in terms of where he's getting his shots, and I'm making sure to not get in his way and to not step beyond him, at least without him acknowledging that I'm not going to be in his way. So as I step up here to capture the ring exchange, if you're wondering what a multi-camera cut of everything with the camera angles and what the audio would look and sound like, well, here you go.
Steve, as you place this ring on your wife's finger, please repeat after me. With this ring, I thee wed.
With this ring, I thee wed.
From this day forward.
From this day forward.
And pledge to you my love.
And pledge to you my love.
Now and forever.
Now and forever.
So by the power vested in me by the state of New Jersey and universallifechurch.com, I now pronounce you man and wife. You can kiss your bride.
So once the first kiss happens, be ready to move quickly. Yes, even with a monopod. Terry is by my side and a little ways back, just making sure that our path is clear. And I'm just making sure that I'm keeping things steady as I start to walk back and follow them. Fun fact, monopod might make for a pretty good poor man's Steadicam in a pinch, if and when you need it to. Not something I actually intended to do, but I've done it on a few occasions and it tends to work out. Now in this case, I'm just grabbing what I can of different bridesmaids and groomsmen leaving, and once I get what I can of this, we're pretty much on our way. I'm starting to think about grabbing things and getting ready for the next portion. I didn't capture myself grabbing the officiant's lab, but I did capture getting the grooms after the fact.
So we kind of hit it under these. Is everything okay? Can you hear me, Jim? He don't have it live. He won't know until later.
I'll check it. You were going to say you moved it a little bit?
Kind of, because she wanted to hit it on the flower. Right here was just too in the face for us. So
Okay.
whatever
Yeah,
happens,
that's fine.
we're fine.
Yeah,
with it,
that's
dude.
fine.
But it was still very like out. The
Out,
microphone
yeah.
was not hitting. You know
Okay,
what I mean?
yeah.
I was talking. Did you hear me or no? Oh, you won't hear it till later.
Yeah, so we'll check it later. So.
Andrew, can you hear me? Check.
Yeah, okay. So we'll be good, yeah, we'll be able to check it. We have the officiants, everything, and the DJ too, so we have a bunch of different options, so we'll be good either way.
How do we look up there? I'm going to need you guys to crop out any sweat that I have. I was leaking up there.
Oh no, it was hot. The sun was like beating down on you.
I'll take hot over rainy.
Oh yeah. No, the weather's been great at this point, yeah.
So we're now back at our home base here in the reception room. About 5-10 minutes after the ceremony, so I brought all the cameras back, brought all the audio gear back, and of course, now at this point, we're starting to get ready for the reception, which in some sense is actually partially a relocation, you might say. So in this case, had a Zoom H6 outside capturing the ceremony and the DJ, and now bringing that inside for the indoors setup that the DJ had. And a fun fact here, as you might be able to tell, the DJ had 2 different audio setups he was utilizing, and it's actually for this reason I typically do bring 2 Zoom H6 units just to be able to account for that. Now in this case it wasn't needed, and I had enough time to bring the one from outside indoors, but always good just in case you ever encounter a situation like that where you need it. As you can tell, it's going to be the same setup here, so just utilizing an XLR out from the main speaker to capture audio there, and of course I'd worked with the DJ and trusted him enough that he was good to let me just set this up on my own here. So mostly getting that in place, at least initially, and then starting to think about what the camera coverage is going to look like for the reception itself. So in this case, I'm still going to use my Sony a7R and the 24-70 as my main sort of roaming and just general run and gun rig to capture all of the key shots that I think I will need for the reception and the coverage there, all the intros, the first dances, and all of the sort of clutch shots you would expect. In this case, though, probably going with handheld coverage rather than anything else, and I'll typically go handheld for the reception just to be able to have a little more flexibility, to move around, to get key shots at critical moments. Sometimes, of course, you can't do that even with a monopod, even with a gimbal, of course, certainly not when on a tripod with a main primary angle like that. So in that sense, I want to make sure I can move around and get the shots I need quickly, and maybe have more opportunity to capture some dynamic, sort of unique handheld shots that maybe I haven't gotten up to this point throughout the course of the day. Of course, usually in this case, again, for solo wedding videography coverage, I usually will rely at this point on a second angle, whether thinking of just general multi-camera coverage for a longer, reception, speeches, and toasts, the first dances edit, but even just in general to have a backup. So in this case, that second camera angle is going to be my Sony a7S III on the 16-35mm f2.8 G Master version 2 lens. This is actually my first gig, I think, using the 16-35mm G Master version 2. And I would say, in terms of focal length and how I set the shot up, that is probably a pretty standard configuration. A lot of times I am trying to just capture a wide shot of the room and have a constant safety shot that I can rely on to cut back to. And of course, in a venue and situation like this is also going to make that space, given it's a 16-35, feel a lot larger and wider, and just give it more of a perspective than the room actually might even feel itself for those that are there. So I think it works out well in that regard. But in this case, of course, I've talked about setting up audio for the reception, I've talked about what my camera setup is going to be, and as you can see now on screen, we should probably touch on lighting as well. So in this case, I am setting up one of my Aperture LS60X lights on a Manfrotto 1004 BAC stand. Again, if you're curious about any of the gear I'm using throughout this wedding behind the scenes, the links to all of those items will be in the description below. And of course, feel free to ask any questions in the comments if you have them. In this case, really utilizing a similar setup that I will do at a lot of weddings, where just have the lights kind of running off of Sony NPF batteries, the higher capacity 970 ones, and just utilizing barn doors to shape the light a bit to get it in the proper direction in terms of where I will position it. Generally going to be aiming for what I believe to be the center of the dance floor, where we expect the couple to be once they enter, where we expect those first dances to take place, and generally assuming it's going to be in the same area, in the area where we would also expect most people to be dancing once the DJ starts playing dancing music later in the night. Now in this case, it is a smaller room, as I noted beforehand, so there's really not a lot of options for positioning the light. And so in this case, I had talked with Terry beforehand. We had talked about planning this because, of course, he had an off-camera flash that we were also trying to coordinate the position of. And, we will typically, when shooting together, try to position those in really the same area, so we're not taking up too much space or getting in each other's way or, causing too many trip hazards as it might be. So in this case, we decided to position this by the head table, at least for a temporary setup. Mostly because, number one, it was able to get close to the center of the room. We could, of course, move it easily when needed, say, for speeches and toasts. And in this case, it just overall wouldn't be in the way of people in general. And of course, if and when we needed to move it, when we wanted to get shots of the couple at the head table, that was easy enough to reposition. Now, if we had a little more space, as you can see, testing out the light and the lighting levels there, we probably would have set up 2 lights, but smaller venue, it lends itself to 1 light. So once the main reception, cameras, lighting, and audio were set up, it was time to cover cocktail hour. In this case, I would say there's really 2 goals with covering cocktail hour. Number one, just gathering some more B-roll, primarily of all of the different reception details. So some of what you're seeing, I actually, quite frankly, gathered some of this footage a little bit before we shot the ceremony, just because I had the time, but then I will also use that opportunity leading into and during cocktail hour to get those final shots of the table set up, just because sometimes those don't get done until the last minute anyway. And number 2, of course, to actually capture some of the cocktail hour B-roll itself. So yes, in some cases that's shots of the same things I've already gotten just as the day has gone on, getting a different perspective of the sky and the environment. And of course the actual just typical shots of people doing their typical cocktail hour things. Really not too much to get here. Again, this is the kind of footage that typically, if anything, might not get used in the final film, but never hurts to get a few shots if and when you can. So in this case, now we're at the point where we're starting to set up for the actual reception, trying to position that safety angle with the Sony a7R III and the 16-35. Whether you can tell or not, again, it's a smaller room and it's pretty crowded, so there really were very few spots we felt we could position this where it wouldn't be a tripping hazard overall, or at least that I thought. So went back and forth here on a few different options. You'll see me grab this spot here. In this case, I really just wanted to try to capture a perspective of the room where I figured it would provide good coverage of the dance floor, but also just show a bit of the grandeur of the room. We had this sort of vaulted ceiling with the windows there, and, you know, at least maybe half the crowd on that one side, so I wanted to have that in perspective, but, you know, maybe grab a portion of the head table. But then I thought, you know what about this particular angle, because that might get better coverage of bridesmaids, groomsmen, and the couple as they enter, but unfortunately in this case, there really just isn't much of a view. You're not getting a lot of people. You're staring at a wall with a couple of the service doors to the kitchen, and so I figured I could get better coverage and get a little bit tighter with my roaming angle on the a7R V and 24-70, standing in that spot, and then in this case could position the camera back where I had originally thought it would make the most sense.
Remember the couple that were dancing?
Yeah.
I don't know if this one will get it.
I'm thinking they might line up. That's why I was saying, like, off the side there, or like a side, like...
Once everybody's sitting,
move it there. That's what I was...
After everybody's sitting.
Want to move?
You want to...
So as you can hear, coordinating that with Terry, and yes, we agree, we're on the same page here, so we move that angle back to the spot I originally thought made the most sense. Again, it also does really help, I think, when coordinating with the photographer, not just where you're standing, but where your other angles are, and making sure that they're aware of them and not going to be getting in the way of them, at least super directly. You know, if they get within the peripheral of a shot, that's something you could always crop into and edit out, but I have done weddings where you have photographers and videographers not quite on the same page, and sometimes those safety angles end up just being a total loss, so definitely making sure you account for that is an important thing. So, of course, as the DJ is starting to get things ready for the couple and the bridesmaids and groomsmen enter, I'm double-checking the audio, making sure we're good there, double-checking levels. That never hurts to do. I will still do that periodically throughout the course of the reception if I can. And in this case, now getting myself in position to be able to capture folks as they start to enter the room. So every wedding party, every couple, every DJ is going to handle intros of, you know, the entire wedding party in a different manner. I've seen sometimes this take as little as 15 to 30 seconds with almost no fanfare from anyone that's coming in, to sometimes a thing that can take up to minutes. And you just have to be prepared for it either way. Hopefully you can see some of the benefits we have of having a couple camera angles here, yes, even as a solo shooter. And again, this might explain maybe why I have that roaming angle, why I'm using a 24-70. You can see I have to start in pretty tight on the telephoto end as folks are entering from that corner of the room, and they come in from an area where there's not a ton of light. Then they enter and get towards the center of the room where we start to have the LS60X hitting them, and I'm able to adjust the zoom and get a little more to a medium/wide shot. And again, kind of speaking to the idea of just being prepared for anything, this is a case where you want the ability to be able to get those little moments as they happen. I have, in this case, both of these cameras running in 60 so that they can be slowed down if there's a unique little dance or moment that takes place. I will say these intros can sometimes be challenging to light. This room did have at least some natural daylight. Of course, we had the LS60X in the center of the dance floor, so I think that helped, and hopefully you can probably tell the difference that makes once the bridesmaids and the groomsmen enter that center of the floor. Lighting starts to look good and more proper as to what you'd expect, and I think that's fine. Overall, you just have to do your best in terms of coverage here. In a feature film edit, very few, if any, of this, maybe other than the couple's own entrance, would probably make it, but a reception intros, first dances, speeches, and toast edit, this is the kind of coverage that you want to have, and be able to just have continuous video coverage of what's going on here in this case. Now, talking white balance, I feel like there are a lot of people that would try to neutralize this room and go maybe towards the, 3000, 3200 realm where these tungsten lights were, but I actually did want to keep the room warm and mix in a more daylight-like color temperature with the LS60X to sort of keep the warmth of the room. But now, in this case, let's get to the couple entrance.
I need you all to please stand, and once again, I want to turn your attention to the main entrance. It is my great pleasure to introduce to you your guests of honor, Mr. and Mrs. Stephen and Jamie Kushner.
So again, speaking to the reason why I will sometimes go handheld here, quickly moving myself up into position, doing what I can, moving around to get shots I need just to make sure to cover this. Again, maybe explaining the 60 frames per second moment. If there is an entrance or introduction that you want to slow down, or at least might want to consider doing that, it would probably be for the couple, like this one here. Of course, you could also run that at just regular speed if you want. And now let's roll into the first dances.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's hear it for Jamie and Stephen one more time. Big round of applause for your bride and groom. I would like to ask you all to please remain standing as Stephen and Jamie share their first dance as husband and wife.
So yes, a lot of time these events will happen in quick succession, one after the other, so having your cameras, having your lighting, of course audio should be consistent, but having these things already set up and ready to go will definitely help. You can see our wide shot getting just a nice little perspective of the couple dancing there. And generally, again, at least as a solo videographer, when it comes to covering first dances, I'm usually having that wide shot capture the room, letting it do its thing while I use that roaming angle. And yes, in this case, handheld, but whether that would be on a gimbal, whether that would be on a monopod, however I'm doing it, taking a similar approach to what I did with the roaming angle during the ceremony. In this case, just picking different areas and utilizing something like the 24-70 zoom to get different focal lengths, different shot ideas, trying different angles, trying to shoot into the light, trying to shoot from the side of the light, trying to shoot from different perspectives, low, high, trying to get just different natural moments here and see what works best and looks best as the dancing unfolds. Now, as you've heard at this point, I am also capturing audio with the Zoom H6. That's how you've actually heard the DJ speaking up to this point in these couple of different audio snippets I've been able to include. I would include more, but of course, YouTube and copywritten music, there's only so much I can include that wouldn't potentially get me into some trouble there. But in this case, again, having that DJ audio is going to lend itself to being a very smooth edit if you're doing a long take of reception, intros, and first dances. Now, in this case, the DJ decided to do something a little bit different, which in this case was to have all of the members of the wedding party come out onto the dance floor and dance with the couple. So you'll sometimes see this in different weddings. I would say it's not a very common thing, but it does happen. And if and when it does happen, this is really a golden opportunity to be able to get a packed dance floor, hopefully still a well and neutrally lit dance floor, and be able to capture some of those shots. Say if you have trouble getting this later on in the night, if folks leave or find other things to do, or of course if the room is much darker during the night, or you have DJ lighting or no DJ lighting, that might impact some of these shots later. So I think this is actually a really good thing when DJs do it. You'll see I'm still utilizing 60 frames per second, utilizing the lighting setup we had, still making use of this setup here. So quite frankly, even though we're going to get some dancing shots later, as you'll see, just being able to capture some moments from when all the guests join the couple on the dance floor could actually get you enough dancing footage that you need, at least depending on the feature film that you're trying to put together. So in this case, this was just a quick one-song little moment here. After this, we went back to father and daughter, and eventually mother and son dances for the bride and groom. And you're going to see here in terms of my coverage and how I will usually tackle these moments, it's essentially the same as what I would do for just the couple's first dance. So moving around and capturing different shots and perspectives. If there is one angle you typically won't see me do, at least let's say in a one light setup, it is me being directly under that light, just because the lighting will tend to look a little bit flat and could also be just a little bit overexposed compared to what you would find in other sorts of diagonal perspectives, where you'd get a little bit of Rembrandt lighting with, you know, a slight shadow on one side, but otherwise well lit on the majority of their face, or to be able to shoot into the light directly and get sort of a halo effect, depending on if and when you're able to capture the couple within the light directly. And whether you may notice or not, the exposure of the room is actually slightly changing, so as the night draws on and things get a little bit darker, our exposure does shift. I'm keeping an eye on the camera just to make sure that we're not shifting too far out of what I think would be an acceptable range and not getting too underexposed, but that is something to keep in mind as well. This can be especially true if you have, say, a reception during the summer and you have a lot of windows in that room, as things might shift over time. Something you definitely have to be cognizant of. Now, in this case, we had about 5 to 10 minutes to prep before the speeches and toasts were to take place. And again, this is really helpful to be able to coordinate that with the DJ, because we weren't necessarily pressed for time. We didn't go right into that moment. He was able to give us a little bit of breathing room there. So in this case, just taking that opportunity to change the batteries on my camera, making sure I'm set up there. Sometimes you never know how long speeches and those moments might go. And I'm also going to just shift things around a little bit to get a slightly different setup for the speeches. So in this case, going to utilize again my A7R5 and the 24-70, at least to get the speaker as they're speaking, but then going to use the Sony a7R and the 50mm G Master as just sort of a static shot on the couple to get their reactions to the speaker. Now, because we are doing the speeches, audio is going to remain the same. We're going to go through the DJ there with the Zoom H6 and the microphone that they're using, but in this case, we're going to take the LS60X and reposition this, at least so that it is hitting the couple and as much of the speaker as we can. This is going to be one of those moments where we try to tell the speakers to stay on a consistent side. In one case, you'll see the groom's best man listen. I don't think the maid of honor listen in this case, but again, you work with it. You do what you can, and you make the most of that situation. In this case, I would say the majority of weddings, we see a lot of different couples utilizing the idea of having speakers just speak right next to the head table. So therefore, we can usually just hit this with one light, and that ends up being enough to ensure that whether it's the couple and wherever they're seated, and that the speaker isn't too dark, too underexposed. Something you might have to or want to coordinate is to let the couple know ahead of time that you might be doing this and that they might have a light directly on them. I don't think this is something most couples think about when they're on the dance floor, but they might certainly notice when it's directly on them as they're seated, hearing their loved ones speak about them. So I'm not going to include every moment from the speeches and toasts here, but I will play a few snippets so you get an idea of what this looks like with cameras and audio. In some cases, had to pivot on the fly when folks didn't listen to the directions we gave, but again, I think overall we were able to make the most of it.
On a serious note, Jamie, you are exquisite. You're timeless. You have the love of a man named Steve, who told me when we were ring shopping, I can't believe she chose me. I can't believe I get to play at Topgolf for free for the rest of my life. So that tells me that not only is this marriage going to last, it's gonna last forever, or until you quit your job. So let's raise a glass to Jamie and Steve on their new journey of love, laughter, and maybe a little bit of bourbon. Cheers.
We used to fight a lot, 2-on-2 with the other brothers in the neighborhood. So it'd be the Kushners versus the Enochs, and then we took on the Sarins. I think we took on the Egglers at one point. True story though, we usually won, so I give you credit there. That was usually us, right? We usually came out on top. Although Greg Del Vecchio did work you really bad one time, and you came home and Dad said you better go fight him again because you got lumped up pretty bad. But I think I can speak for all of us in this room when I say always continue to love, push, and better each other. Marriage isn't without challenges, but when challenges inevitably present themselves, just remember your love and commitment and how you feel here tonight amongst your family and friends who love you. So I love you guys. Wish you the best. Cheers.
So breaking things down here to get ready to film the next portion of the night, you will notice that I covered, in this case, the speeches and toasts with a setup where I had the tripod and the monopod really side by side. So using the monopod very much on its own to just get the speaker, and of course can move, pan, and tilt as needed with them, or if they stay static, can cover that. and then having the tripod capture that shot, I can usually monitor those 2 shots in one go from one position. That's helpful. In this case, also now just getting some cake shots. Yes, we did utilize the LS60X to light this as well. Nothing too dramatic here, just making sure that this gets lit directly, because sometimes these cake shots, especially when done hastily towards the end of the night, might be something that you don't think about, but sometimes a couple really does want to see this and have this, so also having it lit, of course, can help the photographer, maybe prevent them from having to do anything more explicit. So as we're moving things around here, and again, getting ready for the next portion of the night, I did mention that the DJ had 2 different setups. One of the things that the couple knew and that the DJ was going to set up to do was to be able to utilize that same gazebo area where the ceremony took place to actually do dancing for later in the night. So yes, they had that little sort of staged dance earlier in the main reception room where everyone joined the couple on the dance floor. This is actually where the main dancing throughout the night was going to be taking place. And in this case, Terry and I are just actually discussing and planning how we might want to cover this, but even before we do that, we had a couple more things, at least I wanted to get. That included at least a little more B-roll, including some night establishing shots. Again, if you want to convey the change of how the day unfolds, you never know what transitions and little transitional elements might help to tell the story. So getting some of those little details, I think, can be really helpful. And you may have noticed in some of those shots that I just showed on screen that it is at this point of the night I have decided to break out my 50mm G Master f1.2, mainly to help with the low light and help capture some more nice shots with some good bokeh here. Getting a little bit of a DJ sequence, I always think that is nice, and while I can utilize some better lighting, in this case keeping things in 60 frames per second, although as the night would go on and lighting would get even darker, I will eventually switch this to 24 frames a second. Also because I think it is helpful to just get dancing in regular motion, but it does help to have at least a few slow motion clips when you can get them. Now in this case, you may notice that we're really not utilizing the LS60X at this point. In fact, I really put it away. But that's for a couple of reasons. Number one, as you can tell, the DJ lit this gazebo area fairly well, so we were able to make use of that, number one. And then number two, we did have a number of rope lights across the ceiling of the gazebo, which looked very nice in their own right and did actually provide some ambient light at least. So yeah, you might be getting some different mixed colors and different lighting situations from time to time as this shifts and unfolds, but it keeps the room looking natural, it keeps the guests happy, and gave us enough light in this case. Now, I really do like the 50mm in particular for dancing footage. Not too tight. I can sometimes think telephoto lenses look a little bit too detached when trying to capture dancing, but enough to provide a little bit of intrigue when shooting. You saw sort of shooting through people there for a second. You don't have to be right up in people's faces, of course, say with a wide-angle lens, and if you do have moments and areas of the dance floor where it is not as crowded, having a little bit of focal length, having a little bit of compression with something like a 50, and of course being able to blur out the background with f1.2, all lends itself to some really good shots, I think. Now this might go without saying, but if there is a group of people to get on the dance floor, it is, of course, the couple themselves. As I mentioned before in this case, Jamie and Steven were a very energetic, extroverted, fun couple, so they certainly made use of their time with their guests, having fun on the dance floor and getting all of their different moments there. But especially if you have a couple or a bride and or groom that maybe isn't as comfortable, doesn't like to dance as much, you should definitely try to make the most of those moments and get what you can. In this case, I'm really just picking different spots here, waiting for moments to happen, trying to find at least decent pockets of light, letting the fast moments and fun ones happen as they unfold, trying to maybe stay in a bit more of a fixed position and let shots sit a little longer when the music and the overall night slows down a bit. Truthfully, I would say I had more than enough dance footage, at least especially after a few minutes of covering some of this outside dancing, so really by the end of the night it was just kind of focusing on the couple. I will say shots like this are always money for a wedding film. When you have the couple, a nice well-lit environment, and some rope lights with some beautiful bokeh and background blur added. And this also speaks to getting in some of those spots where you have to get low to get shots, where you might be at sort of an unorthodox angle for you, at least as a videographer or shooter, but I'd say those moments are worth it. Of course, once we captured that, we said our goodbyes to the couple and the venue staff themselves. Terry and I already had most of our gear packed up. We're usually breaking things down as we can as the night unfolds, and we are on our way.
Got a good shot. The shot I want, which was good when they cleared out, was from the ground looking up with the lights and the bokeh,
Oh yeah.
right? With
I
them.
tried to do it, but I didn't want the flash to keep hitting somebody's face.
Okay.
So I was like, he's got the angle.
That's the advantage of the video and the 50, you know.
Yes, as I mentioned before, shots like that with 50, background blur, with rope lights, always clutch. So hopefully this wedding behind the scenes of me as a solo shooter videographer has been of some help to you. Feel free to leave a like and subscribe if it has. Do you like behind the scenes videos like this, whether of wedding videography? Because I do have a few more of these planned, in fact perhaps even a few on the photography side as well, so definitely subscribe and stay tuned for those. All in all, I hope you gained something out of this. For now, that is all I have to say, so thanks for watching.